those look real, so that it looks like it fits into a live-action movie was a real challenge. And now we've got this. I think we accomplished that in terms of making making all these completely synthetic shots, like this one where the sub comes out of the water, look realistic enough to believe that these people are actually in this place. Challenge in the beginning to think that we were going to be doing movies where at least half of the environments were created digitally on a computer, and there just wasn't going to be anything real there at all. And a lot of these sequences are like that. And then they have to be holed up, so you can intercut them with sequences like this coming down the stairs, which is shot in an Italian palace, and be able to cut to a totally digital environment as they come down the stairs outside the palace. The only thing we had in this shot here coming out of the palace was really them walking down a set of stairs, and everything else is fake. I mean, fake in terms of the fact that it's digital.
These scenes were shot with very little background, and as we pan across these windows and things, everything outside was added later. So this included quite an extensive amount of rotoing and manipulation of the background. For the real set, and then the shot where he jumps down is actually made up of like 5 different pieces of film. So here we have the animated droids and putting in the lightsaber and all the interactive effects and sparks and things to tie it all together.
A lot of the times when we had the droids breaking apart and falling apart, we used a rigid body simulator that we'd created here at ILM to help get that realistic feeling of the bodies hitting the ground and bouncing off the walls.
In some cases, a rather abstract way of telling a story, and then I use montage editing throughout the scenes. We'll get into a dialogue scene, but when you get into an action scene, I will separate things off and not show the beginnings and ends of things, but sometimes just the middles, which gives you the sense of what's going on without the continuity of how it's actually happening. And you'll see that in a lot of these action set pieces. And then overall, on the grander scale, I do it in terms of intercutting different ideas, in terms of like the Nemoidians. We jump quite a bit. And I take some real risks in moving the story along faster than what most people are used to in a movie. But it's a style that I established in the very first film, and I've continued to use it in all of the films so that they all are consistent in terms of the style and the way they're put together and the way the story is told. And that isn't just an editorial style, it's the acting style is done that way, the visual style, and I say the general idea of having the story be told through visuals rather than through dialogue. Visuals are music, basically. There's music through the entire movie, and even when there's no music, it's a musical decision not to have the music. It's a counterpoint kind of thing.
The scene where they escape from Naboo, this was the first scene that I encountered during the pre-visualization process where we had to actually have fighting battle droids. No one was quite sure how the battle droids would behave, how quickly they might move, how agile they'd be, what their body language would be. I had the fun of going down to ILM and putting on a motion capture suit, and I was able to act like a battle droid in the middle of this empty studio, and all of my movements were recorded by the computers, and then those movements were applied to a model of the battle droid in the computer. And so what I got back was a videotape of a battle droid which walked and acted and stood and moved like I did. And in fact, I was a little embarrassed at first because I recognized my kind of duck walk.
Even though he motion captured himself, the battle droid's rear end got rotated in such a way that it looked like it had a little back end of a duck, and George ended up liking it. So when we went to do the motion capture with the optical system, which is a lot cleaner, we emulated the duck walk and applied it to the character.
This is a scene where we introduce R2, which was a fun moment for me, since R2 becomes a central character throughout the movie. One of the things we're doing in this movie is to introduce characters, see where they came from. The main job of the first episode really is to introduce characters. It's what the first act of the play is all about. Set up and introduce the characters. And so Star Wars Saga, this will be the first time that R2 is introduced. So I wanted to give him a little bit of a dramatic opening, chance to do something, be a little hero. He is a hero throughout the series. He's always the one that sort of comes through in the end and saves the day. So I thought it was appropriate at this point, when we do introduce him, that we introduce him in a bit of an action sequence where he can again establish this character as a hero, because that continues through the whole series. And I chose R2 to be the one that was introduced first. I guess I gave him the priority because I don't know. I guess I'm partial to him. Don't tell 3PO that. He'll get upset.
Power's back!
Sequence, there used to be a whole sequence going on simultaneously below decks of Jar Jar Binks interacting in a comical way with a hold full of R2 units while the ship was spinning and dodging back and forth amongst the lasers. Jar Jar was downstairs being thrown from side to side, bumping into droids in kind of a large slapstick sequence, which actually was all filmed and it worked pretty well, but one has to make choices in the end as an editor as to what will further the story and what will just delay the advance of the story. Some things that may work well on their own will be dispensed with later on during the editing process in favor of telling the whole story in a smooth fashion.
We are able to introduce R2 in this particular moment with that action set piece, but at the same time I'm able to twist the story in a way that's necessary, because obviously I have to get them to Tatooine in order to meet Anakin, which is again part of the story, and I used that device of introducing R2 and at the same time damaging the ship so we could get to where we needed to go. Back to the Trade Federation, every time I try to introduce a new element of danger, a new threat. In this one I introduced Darth Maul, and at the same time move the plot along on the fact that he wants to have her sign a treaty, which is the basis of the whole plot of the movie, which is they're trying to get her to turn over her planet to the Trade Federation. The Trade Federation is working on one level of greed, wanting to take over this planet, which Darth Sidious is manipulating, because in the end his agenda is completely different. He's just simply using the Trade Federation, using the Jedi, using the Queen for his own purpose. He's the puppet master in all these movies. His goal in this one, the whole plot of the movie really, is for Palpatine to become Chancellor. And this whole thing is a large bunch of machinations to allow Palpatine to ascend to the highest office in the galaxy.
Some shots in the Queen ship that looked like standard live action shots, but once again we actually did quite a bit of work here. George didn't like the timing, and they also had some problems with R2-D2, so we had to slice his head and move his head around and change the sync on that. And that included changing the shadows and all the other little interactions on him. Then we also had scenes where one of the people would walk out and she'd have reflections where she shouldn't. And in other cases, they had a take that they wanted to use, but the girl was still standing there, so we had to remove her out of that scene. So here she is cleaning up, and this was one of the first Jar Jar shots our team worked on. Rob can probably talk about some of the animation issues here.
For every Jar Jar shot in the movie, we had Ahmed Best on set, who did a walkthrough and did performance reference for us and with the actors, so that they knew the timing of where they were looking and when they were talking. This shot here is one of the most difficult Jar Jar shots we did in the movie, simply because of his interaction with the set and with the environment around him.
Making Queen ship show up in space was always a challenge, because it's 100% reflective, and in space there's very little to reflect, so we were always cheating how much of it you see.
Watch the dust come up from this.
The dust in the shot is actually a stage element that we shot. And the shot is computer generated. The background was pasted together from some photographs I took in Tunisia.
Prefer to shoot on stages, but I actually personally prefer shooting on location because you never know exactly what's going to happen. The night before we left Italy, Natalie had woken up in the middle of the night and had fallen out of her bed and had twisted her ankle. You'll notice in this shot she's kind of limping, and she limps basically throughout this whole next 2-week period that we shot in Tunisia. In the background that the sky is not blue, it's actually slightly dark. Well, that was going to be something that would haunt us for the rest of the time that we were in Tunisia. We had a horrific storm that night with 100
Sorry interrupting by my dad.
mile-an-hour winds that virtually destroyed all of our sets in Tunisia.
Tatooine, I wanted to come to Tatooine, but not come to Mos Eisley, which is where the fourth film took place. I wanted to land on a different city so that we got a different sense of what Tatooine was like, and that there were lots of different cities, and that not have the whole story take place in exactly one spot. We can get onto the same planet, but not have it be in the same city. This is quite a large city as opposed to Mos Eisley, which is a very small city. It was a lot of fun in this one to be able to have a lot of the background characters that we weren't able to do before. Little funny creatures and things that I wasn't able to really have in episode 4. Really shows how far the technology has come in terms of being a lot